The game drops on April 29th, tops the PS5 charts. The world goes absolutely nuts for it. And then Japanese developers look at it and say, it's impossible for us to make this. Not, it would be difficult. Impossible was the word they actually used. Now here's what makes that so striking. NTE, Neverness to Everness, is basically a love letter to Japan. Recreations of Akihabara, Shibuya, anime aesthetics so convincing that Japanese players genuinely assumed it came from a domestic studio. It didn't. It's developed by Hada Studio in China. And that's what broke people's brains a little. Aoi, a Japanese Unreal Engine specialist at Indie US Games, started actually breaking down the why. And it's not vibes, it's technical. NTE City isn't a static open world you load into, it's a live city. Things move in real time, constantly. He wrote, anyone in the Japanese game industry who has played NTE will understand. The level of polish in this game is extraordinary. I climbed to the highest point in Hetero City and took photos comparing the PC version and iOS version, and both can be played without stress. I think you can understand how terrifying that is. That word choice matters. Terrifying isn't something you type when you're impressed by a pretty game. That's the word you reach for when you understand exactly what you're looking at and what it means for the people around you. And then he said the quiet part loud. If you asked me whether the same thing could be made in Japan, I would answer that it's impossible. You would need highly specialized engineers in each field, artists with real sense, and the ability to organize an overwhelming amount of assets. To assemble all of that on a large scale is essential. From someone who builds games in Japan for a living, that's not a frustrated tweet. That's a professional assessment. Then a Japanese game producer, Ukiyo, drops the number that actually puts it in perspective. I was personally astonished when collaborating with a top Chinese studio to discover that for a single title, as many as 200 people were constantly mobilized just for character-related tasks, including character production, motion design, and animation design. 200 people just for characters. That's before you even get to the engine, the open world, or any of the game's systems. And he goes further, naming exactly where the management philosophy splits. While Japanese companies tend to view investment in animation as a cost, Chinese companies view investment in animation as the strongest marketing and the greatest monetization point. This difference in perception at the management level manifests as an overwhelming difference in the resources deployed on the ground. It seems like Japanese industry perhaps doesn't value visuals or animations in the same way as the developers in China. Now, here's the thing. This reaction, the shock, the honesty, none of it should actually be a surprise, because someone already said this was coming 5 months ago. Back in December 2025, Shuhei Yoshida, former head of PlayStation Studios, one of the most respected voices in the industry, sat down for an interview and basically laid out exactly what we're watching happen right now. The development speed in China is amazing. They're also quick at changing personnel, and all of the game development work itself unfolds rapidly. One word: amazing. And then he went further. He talked about MiHoYo specifically, the studio behind Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, and said that when he spoke to their representatives directly, both sides agreed it would be quite difficult for Japanese developers to operate the same way. And then he named the actual reason. I wonder if there are some aspects of the development process that Japanese game developers just can't replicate. One reason why games in China are so strong is because they are made in an environment which allows for hiring a large number of personnel who can work long hours. Of course, you never know what might happen in the near future, but looking at the current state of things, I think that's the biggest factor. And there it is. Japan, a country literally notorious for overwork culture, is falling behind. And the reason isn't talent. It isn't creativity either. It's pure scale. Hundreds of people working long hours with no sign of slowing down. Japan, meanwhile, has been tightening its labor laws, overtime restrictions, employment regulations, which sounds like progress, and in a lot of ways it is. But the practical consequence is that the gap between what Japan can produce and what China can produce just keeps getting wider. And Japan did try to close the gap. Blue Protocol, produced by Bandai Namco, 8 years in development. This was supposed to be Japan's answer, a live service anime MMO built to compete directly with the Genshins of the world. It launched in Japan in 2023, pulled in 600,000 players in its first week, and then fell apart due to bugs, missing features, empty servers. It lasted just over a year. The Western release with Amazon Games got canceled. Bandai Namco Online, the studio behind it, went insolvent and was shut down entirely. A Chinese studio later picked up the mobile spin-off and rebuilt it as a separate game. The main game was just gone. Alway had something to say about that too. It's a real shame, but if Blue Protocol had succeeded, I think anime games from Japan might have evolved a bit more. It didn't. And that failure might have been the last real shot Japan had at competing on this specific battlefield. So where does that leave things? Alway put it well, and it's not all doom. It's not that I'm trying to beat them or anything, but I keep finding myself thinking that game development has become increasingly difficult when it comes to meeting expectations. So I often wonder, surely there must be a Japanese way of approaching this? And nobody's saying Japanese game development is over. Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Elden Ring, the output is still there, the quality is still there, but the specific battlefield of live service, open world, gacha-driven anime games, China has won that decisively, and the developers who live and work in Japan are now saying so themselves. Like and subscribe for more stories like this, and if you want to know why a bank analyst thinks GTA 6 should be released with an $80 price tag, click on this video.